I walked in early from my business trip, eager to surprise Lauren. The sound hit me before I saw anything. Familiar voices moaning my bedroom door slightly ajar. My heart stopped when I recognized them both. My father, William, and Lauren, my fiancé, tangled in our sheets. 3 months of sneaking around, he said. Then he had the nerve to say I was not good enough for her. Something snapped inside me. My fists connected with his face repeatedly until blood streamed from his nose. I hardly recognized myself in that moment of rage. Before I tell you how my entire family fell apart that day, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you have ever felt betrayed by the people closest to you. Trust me, what happened next changed my life forever. Life was perfect, or so I thought. At 32, I had everything figured out. A respected position as an engineering project manager at a tech firm in Seattle. A beautiful apartment, overlooking the water, and most importantly, the woman of my dreams. Lauren and I had been together for 3 years and were set to be married in just 2 months. We had sent out all the invitations, booked the venue, and were putting the finishing touches on what was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. I met Lauren at a charity gala my company was sponsoring. She worked for a nonprofit organization that provided art therapy for children with trauma. Her passion for helping others was what first drew me to her. That night she wore a deep blue dress that made her eyes shine like sapphires. I stumbled through our first conversation, nervous, but captivated. When she laughed at my terrible jokes, I knew there was something special about her. Our relationship progressed naturally like we had known each other in a previous life. Weekend hikes through the mountains, cooking elaborate dinners together, planning our future. Lauren was intelligent, kind, and seemingly devoted. She would leave little notes in my lunch bag when I had a difficult meeting ahead, or surprise me with tickets to sporting events. I thought I knew everything about her. My relationship with my parents had always been complicated. My mother, Diana, was warm and supportive, the kind of mom who never missed a school event and always had fresh cookies waiting after a tough day. We had a special bond since I was a child. She protected me from my father's cold demeanor and high expectations. William Parker was a different story altogether. A self-made businessman who built his company from nothing. He measured success solely through financial accomplishment and status. Growing up, he was physically present but emotionally distant. He attended my baseball games but spent the entire time on his phone. He paid for my college education but criticized my choice to become an engineer rather than join his company. Our conversations were brief, formal, and usually ended with him offering unsolicited advice about how I could be more ambitious. Despite the tension, we maintained a tradition of Sunday dinners once a month. Lauren charmed them both from the beginning. My mother adored her immediately, but I was surprised by how well she and my father got along. He seemed to respect her in a way he never respected me. Last month, my parents came to our apartment to discuss wedding plans. Lauren and my father spent hours talking about the venue, the catering, even the investment account he planned to set up as a wedding gift. I was touched, thinking he had finally accepted the woman I loved. He placed his hand on her shoulder, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "I think you have found someone truly special, son." For once, I felt his genuine approval. That night, Lauren and I celebrated with an expensive bottle of wine. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have everyone I loved supporting our union. How naive I was, how blind to what was happening right under my nose. The signs were there, but I chose not to see them. After all, who would suspect their own father of such a betrayal? The first hint something was wrong came about 3 weeks before the incident. Lauren had become secretive with her phone, turning it face down whenever I entered the room, taking calls in another room. When I was away on business trips, she would find excuses not to video chat, claiming poor connection or being too tired. I told myself she was just stressed about the wedding. Planning such a big event while working full-time was exhausting, I reasoned. But other changes became impossible to ignore. Her wardrobe shifted to more revealing clothes, even for ordinary days at work. She started wearing makeup differently, highlighting features she never cared about before. She spent hours at the gym and salon, coming home late without clear explanations. One Tuesday evening, she told me she was visiting a sick friend after work. I offered to come along, bring some soup perhaps, but she quickly declined. Something about her friend being too contagious. Later that night I called her around 9, but she did not answer. When she finally came home after 11, her hair was perfect, her makeup fresh. No one looks that good after sitting at the bedside of an ill friend. Still, I pushed my doubts aside. Lauren was not that kind of person. We had built our relationship on trust and honesty. The idea of her being unfaithful seemed absurd, especially given how close we were to our wedding day. Then my father started showing up at our apartment unexpectedly, always when I was at work or away on business. He claimed he wanted to check our security system, or drop off wedding-related documents, or discuss some surprise he was planning for the ceremony. Lauren always mentioned these visits casually, as if there was nothing unusual about them. But one evening during a family dinner, I noticed something that made my stomach turn. The way my father looked at Lauren when he thought no one was watching. His eyes lingered too long, followed her movements with an intensity that went beyond fatherly affection. When she bent to pick up a dropped napkin, his gaze was not where it should have been. I dismissed it as my imagination, maybe even my own insecurities, about never being good enough for my father. 2 days before I discovered the truth, my neighbor Jack called me. Jack was an elderly man who spent most of his days watching the comings and goings of our building from his balcony. He mentioned seeing an older gentleman frequently visiting my apartment when I was gone. A man driving a black Lexus, always arriving around midday, staying for a couple of hours. My father drove a black Lexus. I thanked Jack, and hung up my mind, racing to find innocent explanations. Maybe my father really was planning something special for the wedding. Maybe he and Lauren were organizing a surprise for me. The alternative was too painful to consider. The man who raised me and the woman I planned to spend my life with betraying me in the worst possible way. No, that could not be happening. I was scheduled to be away for 3 more days on my business trip to Chicago. But after that disturbing call, I could not focus on work. I made up an excuse about a family emergency and booked the first flight home. During the entire journey, I swung between feeling ridiculous for suspecting them and being terrified of what I might discover. I kept telling myself that I would surprise Lauren with an early return. We would laugh about my unfounded jealousy, and everything would go back to normal. It was just past noon when my Uber dropped me off at our building. I noticed the black Lexus parked across the street immediately. My heart sank, but I still held on to hope that there was a reasonable explanation. Perhaps my father had indeed been helping with wedding preparations. I took the elevator to our floor, my palms sweating, a knot forming in my stomach. The moment I put my key in the door, I heard it. Laughter, followed by sounds no son should ever hear his father making. The apartment was eerily quiet except for the sounds coming from our bedroom. I noticed my father's familiar camel hair coat draped over the living room chair, his keys on the coffee table next to an open bottle of the expensive scotch I had been saving for a special occasion. 2 glasses lipstick on one. My briefcase slipped from my fingers, hitting the hardwood floor with a thud. I moved toward the bedroom in slow motion, each step heavier than the last. The door was not fully closed. Through the gap, I could see them reflected in the mirror above our dresser. My father and Lauren in my bed on the sheets Lauren and I had picked out together for our new life. His wedding ring glinting in the afternoon light. Her engagement ring, the one I had spent months saving for, still on her finger as her hands gripped his shoulders. I pushed the door open. The hinges creaked, announcing my presence before I could find my voice. They froze, then scrambled to cover themselves. The look on their faces, I will never forget it. Not guilt, not at first. Annoyance at being interrupted. Lauren found her voice first. "Bryson, you are home early. This is not what it looks like." The most cliché line in the history of betrayal. My father sat up, pulling the sheet around his waist, his chest still heaving. "Son, you need to calm down and let us explain." Explain what I finally spoke, my voice a stranger to my own ears. "Explain how you are sleeping with my fiancé. In my bed, weeks before my wedding." My father had the audacity to straighten his posture, attempting to regain his usual authoritative demeanor, even in his undressed state. "This is not some tawdry affair, Bryson. We have genuine feelings for each other." "Genuine feelings," I repeated, unable to process what I was hearing. "We did not plan this." Lauren added, tears now streaming down her face. "It just happened. About 3 months ago, when your dad came by to drop off those venue brochures, we started talking, and there was this connection. 3 months. While I was planning our wedding, While I was picking out tuxedos and tasting cakes and writing my vows, the betrayal was so complete, so calculated I could barely breathe. My father stood wrapping the sheet around himself. Your mother and I have not connected in years. Lauren understands me in a way no one else does. You have to understand, son. Sometimes people meet the right person at the wrong time. He actually placed his hand on my shoulder, as if comforting me. Then came the words that broke the last thread of my restraint. The truth is, Bryson, you have never been good enough for Lauren. You lack ambition, passion. She needs someone who can match her fire, challenge her. Our connection is intellectual, spiritual. Something beyond what you could offer her. Something snapped inside me. 3 decades of feeling inadequate in his eyes, of seeking approval I never received, combined with the fresh pain of this betrayal. My fist connected with his jaw before I had even made a conscious decision to hit him. He stumbled backward, shock replacing his self-righteousness. I did not stop with one punch. Again and again my fists found their target. His nose, his eye, his mouth. Blood sprayed across the white sheets. Lauren screamed, trying to pull me off him. I pushed her away. Not hard enough to hurt her, but enough to make it clear she should not touch me. Get out, I said through clenched teeth. Both of you get out of my house now. My father wiped blood from his face, all pretense of dignity gone. You will regret this, Bryson. No one lays hands on me, especially not my disappointment of a son. Lauren was sobbing, gathering her clothes from the floor. Bryson, please, we need to talk about this. I never meant to hurt you. I walked to the closet, pulled out her suitcase, and began throwing her things inside. You have 15 minutes to get what you need and leave. Anything left behind goes in the trash. As I shoved clothes into the suitcase, my father limped to the bathroom. I heard water running, him cleaning his wounds. Lauren followed me around the apartment, pleading for understanding, claiming it was a mistake, that she was confused. I said nothing, continuing my mechanical task of removing her from my life. When the suitcase was full, I dragged it to the front door and tossed it into the hallway. Lauren stood in the middle of the living room, now dressed but looking utterly lost. My father emerged from the bathroom, his face swollen, but the bleeding stopped. He gathered his clothes and dressed slowly, wincing with each movement. Just before they left, he turned to me. You are not the first, you know. Your mother has turned a blind eye to my indiscretions for years. She understands that men like me have certain needs. Lauren is not the first, and she will not be the last. His words were meant to hurt me further, but instead they ignited a new determination. My mother needed to know the truth. She deserved better than this man who had made a mockery of their marriage, who had now destroyed my happiness as well. I watched them leave Lauren, looking back tearfully, my father striding ahead without a backward glance. The moment the door closed behind them, I grabbed my keys. I needed to reach my mother before my father could spin his version of events. I had no idea the nightmare was only beginning. The drive to my parents' suburban home took 40 minutes, but it felt like hours. My knuckles were swollen and bruised from the impact with my father's face. My mind raced through what I would say to my mother, how I would break the news that her husband of 30 years was having an affair with my fiancé. No matter how I phrased it in my head, it sounded impossible, like a plot from a bad movie, rather than my actual life. I parked in their driveway and noticed my father's car was not there. Good, I had arrived first. I would have a chance to tell my mother the truth before he could poison her against me. She answered the door wearing gardening gloves, soil smudged on her cheek. Her smile faded instantly when she saw my face tight with anger and grief. Bryson, what happened? You look terrible. I need to talk to you, Mom. It is about Dad. She led me into the kitchen, removing her gloves and washing her hands before pouring us both iced tea, her standard response to any crisis. I was about to shatter her world, and she had no idea. I took a deep breath and told her everything. How I had come home early to find my father and Lauren in my bed. How they claimed to have been carrying on for 3 months behind my back. How my father had cruelly suggested I was never good enough for Lauren. How I had lost control and physically attacked him. I expected shock, denial perhaps, but then acceptance and sympathy. What I got instead was something entirely different. My mother's face hardened as I spoke, her eyes growing cold. Your father already called, she said when I finished. He told me what really happened. What? When about 20 minutes ago. He said you showed up at your apartment in a rage. That you attacked him without provocation, accusing him of ridiculous things because you have always been jealous of his success. He said you have been under tremendous stress at work, that Lauren has been concerned about your mental state for weeks. Mom, he is lying to you. I saw them together. In my bed. She shook her head, lips pressed into a thin line. William would never do that to me or to you. He has devoted his life to this family. You have always resented him, Bryson. Always competed with him for my attention. And now you have concocted this disgusting story because you cannot accept that he is more successful than you will ever be. Each word felt like a physical blow. My own mother, the one person I thought would always believe in me, was taking his side. Choosing the man who had just destroyed my future over her own son. I showed her my bruised knuckles. Do you think I did this to myself? I caught them in the act. She stood up abruptly, knocking over her glass of tea. You ungrateful child. After everything we have done for you, the education we paid for, the connections your father has given you, and this is how you repay us. With violence and vile accusations. Mom, please. I began, but she cut me off. Get out of my house. I cannot even look at you right now. Your father said you might try to turn me against him, but I never thought you would stoop this low. Tears burned in my eyes, not of sadness, but of pure rage and betrayal. You are making a terrible mistake. He is manipulating you, just like he has always done. The truth will come out. You will see. And when it does, do not expect me to be waiting with open arms. You have chosen him over me for the last time. I stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture fell from the wall and shattered. The sound matched perfectly with what was happening to my heart. In the space of a few hours, I had lost my fiancé, my father, and now my mother. My entire support system gone. In my car, I screamed until my throat was raw. Then I made a decision. I would cut them all out of my life completely. No contact, no explanations, no second chances. I was done with all of them. The next few weeks passed in a blur of pain and radical change. I took a leave of absence from work, unable to focus on anything beyond my basic survival. I sold almost everything in the apartment, unable to look at the furniture that had witnessed my humiliation. The engagement ring I had found in Lauren's drawer went to a pawn shop. I used the money to break my lease and make a down payment on a small rental house in Portland. New city, new beginning. My phone buzzed constantly with calls and messages from Lauren, from my mother occasionally, even from my father. I blocked them all, changed my number eventually, deleted all social media accounts. I wanted to disappear completely from their lives, as they had effectively been erased from mine. Nights were the worst. Sleepless hours spent reimagining every interaction, looking for clues I had missed. The way Lauren would check her phone when she thought I was not looking. The lingering hugs between her and my father at family gatherings. How had I been so blind? Had I been so desperate for my father's approval that I had ignored the obvious signs of his betrayal? The depression was suffocating. Getting out of bed became a monumental task. Eating seemed pointless. I lost 20 pounds in the first month. My new coworkers at the engineering firm in Portland probably thought I was terminally ill rather than heartbroken. The only person I spoke to outside of work was my therapist, Dr. Winters. Twice weekly sessions, where I unpacked the tangled web of betrayal and family dynamics that had led to this collapse. She helped me see that my father's behavior was not a reflection of my worth, but of his own narcissism and lack of boundaries. That my mother's reaction stemmed from decades of emotional manipulation and denial. Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild. One day at a time, one breath at a time. 3 months into my self-imposed exile, I received a text from Ryan, one of the few friends I had stayed in touch with. He still lived in Seattle, and occasionally updated me on what he heard through mutual connections. You should know, his message read. Lauren is pregnant, 3 months along. The timing matched perfectly with my discovery of their affair. A wave of nausea hit me as I realized what this meant. My father was going to be a father again to what would have been my child. The perversion of it all made me physically ill. 2 weeks later, Ryan texted again. DNA test confirmed it. Your dad is the father. Your mom filed for divorce yesterday. So the truth had finally come out. My mother could no longer deny what kind of man she had married. I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow vindication that did nothing to fill the void inside me. The divorce proceedings were apparently brutal. My father had always maintained control of their finances, and now he used that control as a weapon. My mother, who had been a homemaker, their entire marriage, was left with almost nothing. The prenuptial agreement she had signed as a 22-year-old in love protected his assets completely. Meanwhile, Lauren had been discarded. According to Ryan, my father had called the pregnancy an unfortunate mistake, claimed he had never made her any promises, that she had misunderstood the nature of their relationship. Lauren was now living with her sister, preparing to be a single mother to my half-sibling, a thought too bizarre to fully comprehend. The first call from my mother came 5 months after I had walked out of her house. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was tearful, apologetic, begging for forgiveness. She had been wrong, so terribly wrong. Could I please call her back? She had lost everything. Her husband, her home, her dignity. I was all she had left. I deleted the message without responding. More calls followed, more voicemails. Then letters began arriving at my new address, which she must have gotten from someone at my old workplace. Pages and pages of apologies, explanations of how William had gaslit her for years, how she had been conditioned to believe his lies, how desperately she regretted choosing him over me. 6 months after the implosion of my former life, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop halfway between Portland and Seattle. Neutral ground. Public place. No chance for the emotional manipulation that had been the cornerstone of our family dynamic. She looked a decade older than when I had last seen her. Gray had overtaken her once carefully colored hair. Deep lines etched her face. She had rented a small apartment with what little money she had managed to keep in a personal account. She was looking for work, but at 55, with no recent job experience, the prospects were grim. I listened to her, pour out her heart, her regrets, her shame, at not believing me. My father, she revealed, had been unfaithful throughout their marriage. There had been signs she had deliberately ignored, choosing security and the appearance of a perfect family over confronting the painful truth. William had moved in with a 29-year-old pharmaceutical rep he had met at a conference. His company was thriving. He had faced no real consequences for destroying 2 women's lives or for betraying his son in the most fundamental way possible. Lauren had reached out to my mother, recently seeking financial help with the baby, a girl born just 2 weeks earlier. My father had provided minimal support, enough to avoid legal issues, but not enough to actually help. Lauren was struggling her career, sidelined, her reputation in tatters. As my mother spoke, I felt the hard shell around my heart begin to crack, not from forgiveness but from understanding. She had been as much my father's victim as I had been, just over a much longer period. Her betrayal of me had been the result of decades of psychological conditioning. "Do I hate him?" she asked, hands trembling around her coffee cup. Sometimes I replied honestly, but mostly I pity him. He will never know what it means to truly love someone more than himself. That is a poverty all his wealth cannot fix. We did not hug when we parted. The wounds were still too fresh, the trust too fragile. But I agreed to take her calls going forward, a small step toward whatever our new relationship might become. On the drive home, I thought about what my therapist had told me during our last session. Forgiveness is not about absolving others of responsibility for their actions. It is about freeing yourself from the burden of hatred and resentment. You do not forgive for them, you forgive for you. I was not ready to forgive my father or Lauren. Perhaps I never would be, but I was beginning to forgive myself for not seeing what had been happening, for being blindsided by people I should have been able to trust. The following week, I had dinner with Melissa, a woman I had met at an art therapy workshop. My therapist had suggested I attend. She was kind, genuine, with no hidden agendas. For the first time in nearly a year, I felt a flicker of hope for the future. Not a naive hope, based on false expectations, but a realistic one, grounded in the hard-won wisdom that comes only through suffering. Sometimes the people you trust the most end up hurting you the deepest. But pain is not the end of the story, only a new beginning. A chance to rebuild on a foundation of authenticity, with clear boundaries and hard-earned self-respect. I would never again accept anything less than what I deserved. And that realization, painful as the journey to it had been, was ultimately worth every scar it left behind. Have you ever had to completely rebuild your life after a betrayal? How did you find the strength to start over? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming life's toughest challenges. Remember that your worth is not determined by those who failed to value you properly. Thank you for listening, and I hope wherever you are in your journey, you find the peace and happiness you deserve.